At Oxford University, Dr. Richard Dawkins is Professor of Public Understanding of Science. The author of several best-selling books, he is also one of Darwin's foremost defenders.
I suppose the great mystery of life is to explain where the complexity of life came from. Another way of talking about complexity is to say information. Information is a kind of measure of complexity. And the complexity of life is not just plain complexity, it's also adapted. Living things not only are complicated, but they do things, they survive. They do everything in their power to survive, and they look as though they are beautifully designed machines, machines designed to survive.
Professor Dawkins, can you give an example of a genetic mutation or an evolutionary process which can be seen to increase the information in the genome? Israeli biophysicist Dr. Lee Spetner is uniquely qualified to comment on the role of mutations in evolutionary theory. A specialist in the physics and mathematics of information, he has researched the signal-noise relationships in DNA as a Johns Hopkins University fellow. He has published in leading journals on theoretical and mathematical evolutionary biology. He believes the evidence supports the biblical account that God created certain basic types which have, through time, diversified as they adapted to their environment.
If one were to believe the Neo-Darwinian account, you would have to say that information is built up gradually in small steps, a little bit at a time. And if one examines the mathematics of this sort of thing happening, it turns out that one has to assume that at any stage in evolution that there are a large number of possible mutations that could occur that could be adaptive. And if there are a large number, we should be able to find some today. And the fact is that we don't. All the mutations that have been examined on a molecular level show that the organism has lost information and not gained it.
Now let's go to the final part, the mechanism for change. We've seen the fossil record does not support evolution, but the second line of evidence we have to look at is there some mechanism that could cause all this new information to be added to our DNA? And the two mechanisms evolution talk about are one, natural selection, and second, mutations. Let's look at both of these. How is the evolution model supposed to happen? Evolution and change. First of all, we're supposed to get a beneficial mutation. A beneficial mutation occurs. Then through natural selection, this mutation is selected over all the other existing genes that code for this particular function. Then this mutation must be inherited by the offspring. So the key thing here is, the key we have to understand is this process must add new information. Just can't have natural selection, just can't have mutations. You have to have something that's going to add new information. Something that's going to say this ape-like creature is going to start walking upright. Add that new information to DNA, say it's capable of doing that. Some new information in DNA, say it's going to look more like a human being than an ape-like creature. All this has to be done through something called information. That is the key. So natural selection doesn't work for evolution. Let's look at the last possible mechanism, mutations. Now, if natural selection doesn't work and mutations don't work, then what does that mean about evolution? There's no mechanism, and evolution can't be true. Are there any known or recognized beneficial mutations that have ever added information? Well, let's see what the experts have to say on this. Here's another gentleman, Ernst Chain, biochemist and Nobel Prize winner, states this, that the development and survival of the fittest is entirely a consequence of chance mutations, or even that nature carries out experiments by trial and error through mutations in order to create living systems better fitted to survive, seems to be a hypothesis based on no evidence. And that is exactly what we're seeing in evolution. It is a claim without the supporting evidence. So we've seen scientist after scientist after scientist with tremendous credentials saying there is no mechanism that can cause new information to be added. We've looked at several, and you can go on and on and on. We have Linda Walker, PhD in genetics, Todd Wood, PhD in genetics, Lane Lester, PhD in genetics, James Allen, PhD in genetics, and on and on. We can see scientist after scientist stating they cannot find one beneficial mutation that ever added information, which is required for evolution. So what we're seeing here, again, is a great claim being made without the supporting evidence. Information is the key. Werner Gitt wrote in his book, In the Beginning Was Information. Now, he's the director of the German Federal Institute of Physics and Technology, also considered to be a top information scientist, and he states this: there is no known law of nature, no known process, and no known sequence of events which can cause information to originate by itself in matter. That should take care of evolution right there. So, conclusion. Giuseppe Sermonti, who has his PhD in genetics, kind of brings us to a conclusion here. And he states, many schools proclaim as a matter without any doubt that man has derived from the African apes. And he says, this is a falsehood which any honest scientist should protest against. It is not balanced teaching. That which science has never demonstrated should be erased from any textbook and from our minds and remembered only as a joke in bad taste. And he concludes, one should also teach people how many hoaxes have been plotted to support the theory of the simian or ape origins of man. That says it all. So what does all this mean? It means this: we must choose, ultimately, between God's Word and the deception of evolution. And that deception of evolution started in Genesis 3:5, when it said this: for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Folks, that is the foundation for evolution right there. You rule out a creator God, then who becomes God? We do. And that great lie has now become part of many churches today.
Evolutionists have no mechanism to support their theory, yet they have a faith that life must have happened this way because the alternative is so repugnant to them. As Sir Arthur Key stated, evolution is unproved and unprovable, but we believe it because the only alternative is special creation, and that is unthinkable. Evolution is not science, but a worldview to support atheism. They have a great faith based on man's imagination. Our faith is based on God revealing himself through history, as recorded in the Bible, and ultimately Jesus coming to earth to demonstrate God's great love for us. But we must love, pray for, and be respectful of evolutionists, atheists, realizing they have blinded themselves to God's created works all around them. It would be foolishness to reinterpret the Bible based on their theories, as some churches and Christian schools have done. Evolutionists want to win at all costs, so do not be intimidated by their uncompromising and sometimes mocking attitude. Jesus said, if I have told you earthly things and you do not believe, how can you believe if I tell you heavenly things? John 3:12.